Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Brian.
So how was your week?
Well, the good news is that we do not have to talk about Matt Gaetz this week because there have not been any big developments in the investigation. But the bad news is that Matt Gaetz is still in Congress and on the House Judiciary Committee. But I guess, we take our wins where we can find them.
It's bad news that he's there and nobody's talking about him anymore, which means he's probably going to stay there.
Oh my gosh, God forbid. Nope.
There's your Nope on a platter. We have many more. This is Nope,
the podcast where we shut it down.
We're just a couple of New York Jews talking about the news, beating back the blues. We made a podcast and here's why. Had to laugh so we don't cry. Come and join us for the ride. Welcome to Nope.
Okay, Rachel, what an interesting few days we've had.
Yes, very interesting. There's been other good, or I guess good-ish news. Derek Chauvin, the police officer who murdered George Floyd, was found guilty on all 3 counts, as everybody knows. But in the wake of this historic verdict, we saw all of these politicians weighing in and giving the dumbest possible statements imaginable. And I just kept thinking, this should be so easy.
This is the easiest statement. This is a layup, right? I mean, just come out and say something affirming and justice has been served, but we have a lot of work to do still. But let this be the first step of the reckoning and the change, right? That's it.
Common sense. Yes. Thanks to the jury. Thank you to the lawyers. Condolences to the family. It is, but no, we cannot have nice things.
What do they say?
So Nancy Pelosi, she made a statement thanking George Floyd, quote, for sacrificing his life for justice.
No,
he did not have a choice. No. And I was just like, seriously? A friend of mine who works in PR was like, who wrote that statement? And up until that moment, it hadn't occurred to me that someone other than Nancy Pelosi actually had a hand in that. And if that is the case, that person needs to go into another field because
banned for life.
Banned for life. So, that person needs to be fired immediately. And then there's Mitt Romney, who said following this verdict, I'm pleased that the temperature will come down.
That's the main value.
That's the takeaway.
The entire Black Lives Matters movement.
Which he marched in.
Yeah. He marched in it.
It's just the most Mitt Romney milquetoast possible thing you could
this
say.
Privileged white guy, the main thing he's concerned about is the temperature. He's our finest living meteorologist. Thank you, Mitt
And by
Romney.
the way, if the temperature came down, that would be the worst outcome. And the temperature is not coming down because this continues to happen. And until there's significant police reform in this country, it's going to keep happening. So no to that too, Mitt Romney and all these other people. Whatever. It's just use your brains, think before you talk. And
don't use your words. Call us. We have better PR, or there's plenty of other. Anyone would be better PR. Okay. Yes. No. So, Rachel, how was life out there in the East End?
So I don't even know where to begin with the turns that this day and evening have taken. I just came back. This evening. I was going to call you, but I was like, no, maybe I'll get back in time. I just came back from the animal emergency room.
Oh, no.
Coco. Yes.
I was oh, no. AJ or Coco?
Yeah. So AJ likes gum. And he took a pack of gum out of my room, Trident, left it on a table. I said to him, don't take the pack of gum because if Coco gets it, it's, toxic to dogs. But I come downstairs and I see that the pack of gum is empty of all 14 pieces of Trident. And the exterior is chewed up and it's sitting on the rug.
Oh, my God.
So it contains xylitol, which can be very toxic to dogs. So we just pile in the car. all of us, Josh is driving. I'm in the passenger seat. AJ and Coco in the back. It's raining, and there's no gas.
There was hail
in the car.
here. Was there? Did you have a hailstorm? We had a hailstorm here.
We had a hailstorm. Well, it was like thunder, lightning. It was really bad. So
right. And there's no gas. Wait, who has no gas in the car? What did you do? Like
Josh? This is Josh. This is Josh. He was driving around going to various appointments this week, and he failed to notice that we had no gas in the car. So we're just running on fumes, and we finally make it to the gas station barely. Then we head to the animal hospital while I'm on the phone with Animal Poison Control, which, by the way, charges $75 just to call them and get advice.
Wait, so it's not a government entity? It's just
it's
like a private racket? It's a grift?
Yes, it's a grift. But they did have good advice. So I'm okay, I'm on the phone.
Worth every penny of the grift.
So I'm on the phone with Poison Control because the emergency room won't see you unless you talk to Poison Control. And I'm sitting there on hold.
Wait, they require it? So it's
yes.
like a monopoly. It's like okay.
I mean, I'm glad I know this now because now I have all the numbers in my phone. But the hospital, they won't let us in until Poison Control has weighed in on the situation. We're out in the rain. I'm on hold. And finally, they render their, opinion.
The jury is in.
Because of Coco's large size and this particular flavor, cinnamon gum, it doesn't have as much xylitol as some of the other varieties. And so they say she's going to be okay and doesn't need to take an emetic or anything. We just have to monitor her and give her a small amount of food every 2 hours for the next 12 hours.
So you're getting no sleep tonight.
So I'm getting no sleep
tonight. Again.
So thanks, AJ, for that. That's what I needed to spice up my life this evening. So
congratulations. Cinnamon is spicy. So
how about you?
Equally traumatic events happened to me. So Sunday morning, Doug and I were reading the New York Post, although with great moral reservations about putting money in their pocket. It's indispensable reading. We read page 6. And there's a story about the hot new pizza place in the West Village called Zazzy's, Zazzy. And they said big celebrities have been cited there. Sarah Jessica Parker and Andy Cohen. And I know they're good friends, and they both live right there in the neighborhood. It's it's where Two Boots used to be, Two Boots Pizza on Lower 7th Avenue. And so Doug and I went. It was a beautiful day. We went out for a walk, and my smoothie diet was over. And we said, maybe we'll go get pizza at Zazzy's. Maybe they have gluten-free pizza because a lot of places do now. So we approached Zazzy's and we're walking up past the window and it's reflective in the window. And I look in and I'm like, oh my God, is that Andy Cohen sitting there? And normally seeing Andy Cohen in the West Village is not that big a deal. But seeing him in the place, how stupid is he to go to the place that page 6 2 hours ago.
Maybe he loves it.
Right. So
maybe
anyway,
he comes with the place. Maybe
he conveys with the property. So I said to Doug, look, it's Andy Cohen in the window, because we've been talking about how Andy Cohen goes there. And it's one of those things, you know how annoying it is when you point at something and the other person doesn't see it and it's right in front of them. I'm like, look, it's Andy Cohen. And he's like, well, where? And the window is a little reflective. I'm like, there. And I point and I'm pointing, there's Andy Cohen. And of course,
he turns
Andy
around.
Cohen turns around and looks at me.
And he's just horrified.
Yes, and I'm horrified.
Oh my God, I'm horrified too.
And this is a man, honestly, I really look up to. He's a pioneering gay executive who made my favorite TV franchise of all time. There's a postscript, however. Then I get via Doug's corporate Morgan Stanley membership in the Paley Center, which is for media, I get an exclusive invitation for an evening with Andy Cohen and the Housewives.
Oh, yeah. You sent it to me.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, wow. They're starting to open up the Paley Center. Maybe I can go. And I'm like, but I'm sure the tickets are expensive or whatever, but it's limit 1. And I go in and it's free. It's just to the corporate people. And I go and get a ticket. And then, stupid me, I realize it's going to be on Zoom. And he's going to see me in the audience and think that I'm a stalker. Like he's going to be like, that's the guy who like stalked me at Zazzy's, and he's.
You should put a cat mask on.
I have to put a Ramona mask on with Ramona eyes. Yeah. I'm going to need a restraining order to keep me away from Andy Cohen. Anyway, that was an unexpected thing. I do have one other thing that happened to me. This is a follow-up to your Kindle story from last week about how you started getting these very poorly targeted ads. And I was bragging that I had paid the $20 to not get ads, which is true. However, what you still get in the guise of a public service is when you finish a book, it says you might like reading these next. Right, which is sort of an ad of sorts. So I had been reading one of these books. There's a bestseller out now about like human nutritional evolution, about how our bodies aren't evolved to eat all the sugar and fat that we're eating now, and energy imbalance and things like that. So correctly, it predicted that another good book for me to read would be Animal Vegetable Junk by Mark Bittman. He writes about these things. Another book called The Dorito Effect, which is about like how food companies find the bliss point. But then it gets weird. There's a book that I have no idea what it's about. I took a picture and I tried to enlarge it, and I still don't know what it's about. It's called "You're Not on My List!" ! And a guy going like, "Ah!" like cursing the heavens.
Like,
what list?
Who's not on whose list?
You got my
guy
You got my attention.
Is he the one who's not on the list, or is he the one who's the keeper of the list?
Is he trying to get into a nightclub? Is he trying to get into heaven? Like what is he trying to do? Okay, there's two more. The next one gets weird, and it's very poorly targeted, which is the Faucian bargain, which I'm guessing is a screed against Anthony Fauci. But at least there's a picture there. And there's one that's like a plain text cover that looks like it was produced at Kinko's. And it's called Unreported Truths About COVID-19 and Lockdown, Part 4, Vaccines. And I'm like, is this even a book? And why are they showing this to me? And I'm like, what lunatic would write a book like this? And I scroll it up. The book is by Alex Berenson.
Oh my God. More on that later.
More on that later. Are you going to reveal your relationship to Alex Berenson? Okay,
yes.
Okay.
I will stand in my truth. I'm prepared to talk about it, but stay tuned.
Another tale from the annals of poor Kindle targeting. Okay, Rachel, let's get into the notes here. We've spent long enough on our sad lives.
So I want to talk about this America First Caucus that was announced and then abruptly unannounced following a very rare public outcry, even among Republicans. So it's interesting for two reasons. The first is that it confirms to me and to everyone that the QAnon wing of the Republican Party, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar of Arizona, who are the two like co-authors of this whole thing, and also,
Laura
Louis
Gohmert
and Matt Gaetz and those people, they've embraced an openly racist ideology, whereas the rest of the Republican Party prefers to be more quietly racist. And the second thing that's interesting is that it failed, which is an encouraging development.
Well, how did it fail? Did just like nobody cared about it, or nobody signed up for it?
I'm going to get into that. So it's encouraging, but not that encouraging because they're all still in Congress, like Matt Gaetz. So what happened was this: there's this website called Punchbowl News that was created by some ex-Politico people, and they leaked a 7-page document containing the policy platform for this brand new caucus. And the main thing that it said was that their mission is to, quote, protect Anglo-Saxon traditions.
Oh
and
my God.
Like, which Anglo-Saxon traditions need protecting?
Let's just call it the Nazi ones.
Right.
Why mince words at this point?
Right. But polytheism, maybe?
Right. I mean, like Charles Lindbergh will be their nominee, obviously.
Yes, exactly. So, of course, the tradition that they want to uphold is racism and lies. So, for example, the document said, quote, societal trust and political unity are threatened when foreign citizens are imported en masse into a country, particularly without institutional support for assimilation and an expansive welfare state to bail them out should they fail to contribute positively to the country.
Oh, wait, they're getting imported like semiconductors, like
yes, they're getting imported, and the state is paying for them to stay here. It's a total lie. But then the bigger lie is or equally big lie is the lie that the election of 2020 was stolen, and that we need to investigate voter fraud and fully eliminate mail-in voting altogether.
Right.
Right. And so the group said
the fraud, the result of the imported people.
The imported people, yes. The fake votes
the fake
from people
imports,
who are not citizens.
The counterfeit imports.
Yeah, I mean, it's just classic racist scapegoating. And the group, they obviously want to advance Donald Trump's legacy, which means they said stepping on some toes and sacrificing sacred cows for the good of the American nation, like sacrificing democracy, for example.
Oh, sacred cows. Is that like a dog whistle to Hinduism? My God.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, but I think the most bizarre part of this document that everybody was talking about was that it weighed in on aesthetics. They made judgments. So they said that they will back infrastructure projects so long as they are worthy of, quote, the progeny of European architecture, whereby public infrastructure must be utilitarian as well as stunningly, classically beautiful, befitting a world power and source of freedom. So I just don't know if Marjorie Taylor Greene knows
what any of that mean.
Like, could she distinguish Buckingham Palace from like a medieval times restaurant? I don't think so.
Right. But that was a big thing, Nazism too, right? They wanted to have the like classical architecture to reflect the great, societies of
and they threw out the degenerate art,
Yes, exactly. That's what they want to do. Like, this is not veiled in any way.
It's out in the open. This is not a dog whistle.
They're too stupid to know what they're saying. They probably think they came up with this themselves. Or do you think there's one person who knows these tropes and is like recycling them in?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I just take the document for face value. And all I know is, so Marjorie Taylor Greene's spokesman, Nick Dyer, confirmed that the platform is being written, but then he complained that there were dirty, backstabbing swamp creatures who leaked the document. And he said, be on the lookout for the release of the America First Caucus platform when it's announced to the public very soon. So then the following day, Kevin McCarthy came out and said that he rejects these nativist dog whistles without naming any names. And Marjorie Taylor Greene tries to distance herself from the document, describing the caucus that her spokesman had confirmed was real, and that other congressmen like Matt Gaetz said that they were joining, which is odd because if it's not real and it's not out, right. How could she distance herself from it?
It's the swamp creatures who did it.
Yeah. And so Greene then goes on a Twitter rant. She describes the document as a staff level draft proposal from an outside group and said she'd never even seen it. And then she blasts the media for taking it out of context, but did not specify which policies she was objecting to. And then Nick Dyer, her spokesman, does a 180 and says nothing that was released today was approved by Congresswoman Greene whatsoever. And her office maintained that it was simply a proposal, even though the document itself was called America First Caucus Policy Platform -Final in all.
How much more final can it be? It's right there in black and white.
It's right there. So it's 7 pages. It had a letterhead. It had, policy positions. As odious as they were policy positions. So what will become of the America First Caucus? Will they? Or
is that a hypothetical question?
I don't know. I don't know. It almost doesn't matter because they're just saying out loud what Republicans have been thinking for decades. And I see it as the last gasp of a dying political party. I mean, they're not dead yet, but I do think in the future we will look back at this moment and see this as another dry heave, right? Another dry heave.
We should just rename this podcast The Dry Heaves.
The Dry Heaves.
Because that's really
I don't know. It will turn off our already small niche audience.
Not that small. Okay.
Not that small, but yeah. Okay. So what else?
Okay, shut it down. I have not totally unrelated item, I guess. Staying on the culture wars. They're exhausting, right? I mean, I'm so tired of this. The Dr. Seuss and the Mr. Potato Head. But a new front has opened on the culture wars that must be discussed, and it is a very different sort of war on the unlikeliest of battlefields, and that is frozen yogurt.
Yes.
Now, frozen yogurt is not gendered. It is not racist. Like, what could possibly be objectionable about frozen yogurt? Well, the crusader in this culture war is Demi Lovato, one of our finest living
the singer,
yeah.
Yes.
And she has famously struggled with mental health and eating disorders, which I think the eating disorders is worthy of sympathy and our sensitivity, but it is not a license to be an insaniac. So the froyo shop in question is called the Big Chill, with 2 G's in big. I don't get why. I guess there's 2 L's in chill. There must be 2 G's in big. And Demi says that it promotes, quote, diet foods like sugar-free cookies that praises disordered eating. So, and then she goes on, she's finding it extremely hard to order froyo from at the Big Chill official when you have to walk past tons of sugar-free cookies and other diet foods before you get to the counter. Do better, please. # diet culture vultures.
Wait, so she tags them, and where was this, on Instagram? She tagged them? On
Instagram,
Twitter?
Yeah, on Instagram.
So she tags this small
mom and pop yogurt shop, who is just, I mean, by definition, it's a froyo shop. They have fat-free yogurt, they have other healthy treats or whatever it is, and she doesn't like that because she thinks it implies that you need to be eating these things to be thin and healthy, which is sort of body shaming.
But that's all frozen yogurt places have diet foods. That's just
just being a bully. She's just being a bully. Well, Big Chill came back and she said, they carry sugar-free, gluten-free, and vegan for those with dietary restrictions and health needs. We carry many indulgent items as well. Okay, so they could agree to disagree about that, but then it gets weird. So Demi has another post, and it just starts with, not just that. Your service was terrible. So rude.
How many followers? She has like 50 million followers on Instagram.
Your service was terrible. So rude. The whole experience was triggering and awful. You can carry things for other people while also caring for another percentage for your customers who struggle, all caps, daily just to even step foot in your store. So I have a lot of problems here. So she's coming to the aid of customers who struggle daily to even step foot in your store. This is not the DMV. No one is forced to go to the Big Chill to register their car, right?
No, this is a choice. This is a choice. You can go in, you could not go in.
She's standing up for the downtrodden, all the masses who are triggered by walking into the Big Chill. However, my bigger issue with all of this is, stay in your lane, Demi. Like, she undercuts her own argument. Is this about the froyo and the diet culture, or about the service?
About the service,
right? What's next?
And if
like the bathroom
the service, like why doesn't she specify what it is? And I also feel like this is really punching down, and celebrities should not terrorize small businesses because the effects could be cataclysmic. And this is not like, remember there was a story when Oprah went to Hermes in Paris and they didn't recognize her and she was treated horribly, and she came out
like a Pretty Woman moment.
It was a Pretty Woman moment, and that was horrible. This is a big international luxury goods company treating Oprah like shit. That's legit. Demi Lovato going into the Big Chill yogurt shop and behaving in this fashion, she should just register her complaints on a one-on-one basis, or have one of her assistants call them, not post it on Instagram.
Or report it to the Better Business Bureau, where it will be laughed out of court or wherever.
Yelp. Go on Yelp.
On Yelp, right. This rises to the level of a Yelp review, not
I just feel like it's a little bit too extreme. She needs to she has a lot of power in that Instagram account. She needs to wield it more wisely.
Okay, so nope, shut this down. If you live in the Los Angeles area, please go to the Big Chill and
I will go there next time.
Indulgent delights or
less
or
the vegan. I will try the vegan
gluten-free
delights.
I'm always in the search of gluten-free delights. Okay, so nope, shut it down. Speaking of Los Angeles, I'm going to travel around the world now to Krakow, Poland, where we haven't been lately.
Nice transition.
Thank you. So this is a story about a woman who is unnamed in this remarkable news item.
I think I shared this with you.
Yes. And where did you find it? It's from
I don't know. I think
Poland,
it was trending on Twitter.
Poland Daily News.
It was trending somewhere.
Okay. So this woman calls the police and reports that there's a strange animal in her neighborhood. And the call is taken by a guy who's identified only as Inspector Adam. And later, when being interviewed, he describes this woman with desperation in her voice. She says there is a creature sitting in a tree across the road for 2 days. Everyone is scared of him, she begs.
Wait, it's in a tree?
It's in a tree, right? It's a creature. It's a creature in a tree. And she says people aren't opening their windows because they're afraid it will go into their house. So the guy's first hypothesis is that it's a bird of prey, some sort of hawk or falcon who's just sitting very still for 2 days. I don't know. I guess they could do that. And no, she was sure it wasn't a hawk. So his next suggestion, of course, he said maybe it was an iguana.
In Krakow, Poland?
Because of course.
Are they endemic to that region?
Love the northern climes of the Baltic region. The famous Baltic iguana.
I'm not like a biologist, but I just feel like that's not the habitat for them.
No, more like the tropics.
Yes.
But he backs up his logic. He says years of inspection have told me that people are willing to do anything to get rid of any animal that causes trouble. Maybe someone threw out an iguana. So.
And it just hiding on it.
It says maybe it was a cold night out and it just was on the branch and froze and it's still sitting there. So he's doubling down on the iguana hypothesis.
So she's across the street looking out the window.
The whole neighborhood is terrified to go outside or open their window.
They're opening their shades and peek.
Like these old babushkas. They keep the lights on quickly.
Still there.
Okay, so finally, Inspector Adam takes the call. He goes over to see what is actually happening, and he said he did a short search and he found a brown creature sitting on a lilac branch. It had a brown coat shining in the sun, except the poor guy had no legs or head. So there's a lot what kind of creature has no legs or head? And it's
this what his report was? He's
I found a brown creature with no legs or head.
Comforting.
And it makes you wonder, how is it adhering to the tree? Does it have suction cups or something?
Right.
No, I mean, if it doesn't have legs or a head to balance. So anyway, he gets closer. And really, you know what I'm going to say, but I'm still going to crack up. He got closer and he realized that it's a croissant.
I have so many questions. I only saw the headline of this story. Mystery animal sighting in Krakow ends up being croissant. But so I know the punchline, but I do not know any of the particulars. Yes, how was it up there? Why was it up there? And
how did it stay for 2 days? It must be a big croissant if it's suspended on a branch.
And terrorizing the neighborhood. And how could they not identify?
Was no one in this neighborhood brave enough to approach the croissant to determine its origins?
Had they never seen a croissant?
They're used to iguanas, the great Polish iguanas, but they'd never seen a croissant before. Hard times in Krakow. So Inspector Adams said that the whole crew there was almost swept off their feet by a laughing attack. But then he concluded his tale with a very serious public service announcement. He said, it's always better to check and be pleasantly disappointed. Sometimes, unfortunately, very rarely, it's better to laugh than not to react, which can sometimes lead to a tragedy. What tragedy could possibly occur? Like, if they hadn't checked it out, there might have been an iguana there. It might have been a falcon.
Who knows? Someone would come to eat the croissant, like a alligator or something.
And also, how does a croissant get mistaken for a hawk?
How does a croissant wind up in a tree?
I don't know. Back in Port Washington, we once had a pizza on our roof.
Really?
Yeah, it was just the rowdy teenagers next door, probably. But
Okay.
it was a perfectly good pizza. I mean, they must have really hated us to throw it on the roof to give up a good pizza. I don't
Seriously?
know. Yeah. Okay. So nope to the whole neighborhood in Krakow, Poland. It's not the croissant's fault. What
are you scared of? There's so much to be afraid of, like a croissant.
You're living in like a borderline fascist dictatorship there with like Russian tanks on your borders, and like you're scared of a fucking croissant. Well, you get what you deserve, I hope.
Yes.
Inspector
I
Adam
hope
and
that you've learned your lesson from this experience, and maybe you should just embrace the baked goods if they show up on a tree.
I hope they ate it. I hope they ate it. Okay. Nope. Shut it down. Rachel, you have one more nope.
Yes. I want to talk about a new epidemic. It's called scromiting, which is scream vomiting. And I learned about this from a friend of the pod, Lindsay Goldwert, who sent me a tweet of a video of Tucker Carlson explaining what it is. And I guess I'll let him describe it. I have a clip.
What they're calling scromiting, an uncontrollable wave of screaming and vomiting.
So yes, it is an uncontrollable wave of screaming and vomiting. I do not know what the biological mechanism of this.
I mean, by definition, vomiting is uncontrollable, and screaming is at least somewhat voluntarily, except if you're unless if you're like startled, I guess.
But can you scream and vomit at the same time?
Right, I don't think your throat can do that.
Is it in between the episodes of vomiting, or does
it's like scream vomit, and they alternate so quickly that you can't tell the difference, like animation?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's all very confusing. So I dug a little bit deeper, and I found that this ties back to an appearance on Tucker Carlson's show by an insaniac named Alex Berenson, who you mentioned before and who I've avoided discussing for personal reasons. But scromiting is just a bridge too far, and it must be addressed. So for full disclosure, this is extremely embarrassing, but I'm going to just say it. I briefly, emphasis on briefly, dated Alex Berenson in the early aughts. It was very, very long ago. I just moved back to New York from London, and we were set up by my friend from high school, Belinda Kay, who is a family friend of his.
I was her former piano teacher.
Yes, exactly. So you know her too, and she's lovely. And back then he seemed like a very normal person. He wore a lot of
like soccer shirts, like European soccer shirts.
Yes,
do I remember that correctly? Yeah.
Yes, correct. But he was fairly normal. He was a reporter for the New York Times. He covered big pharma. He wasn't a very nice person. He was quite obnoxious and rude, but he
exactly
was
the kind of guy you were drawn to in your
in my 20s. He was attractive. He seemed smart. So we dated. We quickly broke up a few months later and never spoke again. And then I met Josh and whatever. But fast forward to now, and he has morphed into this crazy COVID truther and a literal ghoul whose beliefs he's a literal
the
ghoul.
Undead, yes.
Whose beliefs systems are so out of step with scientific realities that an editor I've worked with refers to him as the LeBron James of being wrong. He is wrong about everything. Anything imaginable he is wrong about. So one of the many things he's wrong about is the danger of marijuana. He wrote a book about it called Tell Your Children the Truth About Marijuana, Mental Illness, and Violence. And I did not read this book, but the reviews were pretty brutal and it didn't sell well. But he's found a captive audience on Fox News where he goes on to like scare people about marijuana and scromiting. And it's
wait, I still don't know how scromiting fits into all of this.
So scromiting is a way to brand this thing called cannabinoid hyperemisis. And some of these clips, I think they were circulating this week, even though they might be a little bit old because it was, 420, which is the national marijuana holiday. But back to scromiting. So I went on Cedars-Sinai's website and I did a little research, and they said that this cannabinoid hyperemesis is very rare and it only occurs in daily long-term users of marijuana. It involves nausea and repetitive vomiting, and there's no reference at all to screaming.
So he just said, what else can vomiting isn't bad enough. What else can I add in to make it seem more dramatic, more picturesque? I know.
Screaming. It's like you need screaming.
Why not
for
like
Fox News.
shitting as well?
Why not? Why not? Sure. So then I dug a little deeper and I found there was a study on the National Institutes of Health website that was based on a survey of about 2,000 patients, 155 of whom met the criteria of heavy marijuana usage, which was more than 20 days per month of smoking marijuana. And of those 155, 32% had experienced at some point cannabinoid hyperemesis. So that's like 50 people. And then they extrapolate that out into the American population out of these 50 people. And they say that
20 million people are scromiting daily.
So there's 2.75 million people scromiting. This is truly absurd.
Join the millions. It's a movement. Join the scromiting movement.
It's not a moment, it's a movement. So at the very least, I would say more research needs to be done on scromiting, particularly on the screaming element. I need to know more about that.
I want audio proof of this. I want to see someone scromiting.
I need to see someone in the throes of a scromiting attack. This could be like a musical.
Scromiting the musical? We already had Matt Gaetz the musical. What if Matt Gaetz was scromiting? He must be a total stoner. He's a total stoner.
If someone is scromiting, it is Matt Gaetz. So nope to scromiting and nope to Alex Berenson. I hate you. And thank God for Josh, who I met right after I dated that abomination.
Alex
they could not be more different.
I only met you a few times, but I hate you too. I hate you too.
You're horrible.
You're horrible. The worst. You are not invited to be a guest on this podcast. And we say that to very few people. Very few people are banned from this podcast. We'll take anyone. But
you.
Okay, shut it down.
I'll do anything for love, but I won't
do that. Okay.
Okay.
Shut it down. This is that's the end of the Nopes, right? That's the
end of the Nopes. Wow, that took a lot out of me. That was confessional.
Are you okay? Are you okay to do a yup? Okay, good.
I'm okay.
Let's move on to the ups, the little beacons of light, the little rays of hope that got us through the week. Rachel, just push through.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's been a night. So I will say Hard 8, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, is my yup this week. I had never seen it for some reason. I've seen all his other films. It was his first feature from 1996, and it's truly extraordinary. It features a very young John C. Reilly and Gwyneth Paltrow, as well as Philip Baker Hall, who's just fantastic. And if you haven't seen it, it's on the Criterion Channel. It's part of a curated collection of movies about gambling that have been all really good, like that Robert Altman movie that I yupped a few weeks ago called California Split. That was part of this collection, and we watched The Gambler, and I love movies about gamblers.
It sounds like I would hate this movie also.
No,
do not buy me
fantastic.
For my birthday. Do not buy me a subscription to the Criterion Collection Gamblers module.
At least I'll remember your birthday.
Oh, okay. I have one yup, and I'm going to replace it with another. My first yup was going to be to Walter Mondale, who died this week at age 93. arguably not part of the greatest administration with Jimmy Carter, but probably one of the greatest vice presidents we've had. He was the first one who really like made vice president a meaty job. You know, really advising the president, being in the room when it happens. Al Gore,
a good
said
person.
That, Al Gore said that like a liberal, he picked Geraldine Ferraro in the. Wait, you have a story about this? You mentioned. Can you tell the Walter Mondale story?
Yes. So I was in like first grade or second grade when it was the 1984 election. And we had a elementary school vote, and the entire school voted for Walter Mondale. So I was like, oh, of course he's going to win this election in a landslide. And when Ronald Reagan won in a landslide, it was the first time that I realized that I might be living
in a Roslyn bubble.
In a Roslyn bubble that is very different from the rest of the world.
I think that was the majority of the votes he received were from Roslyn
Elementary School.
First grade straw poll. Okay.
It was a moment, yeah.
However, if possible, our greatest vice president, Walter Mondale's death, was superseded by another death that happened just yesterday. It was one of our nation's greatest pop music songwriters who wrote some of the most indelible hits. And, you know, this is my thing. I like to, not just the artists, but I'd like to know who the songwriters were. The guy's name is Jim Steinman. And do you know what song he wrote?
I've heard of his name before. He's written a lot of songs like Mariah Carey.
I would do anything for love, but I won't do that, which was unsolicited. You mentioned it earlier. We mentioned it a few weeks ago on the podcast. They're making a reality show based on that song. He also did Total Eclipse of the Heart. And if you listen to the two songs like next to each other, they're very, very similar. He wrote like
he's known for ballads, right?
All those big over-the-top bombastic like Celine Dion songs and Air Supply songs, and like he's one of those people, when you hear a song that kind of sounds like that, of course it's Jim Steinman. So he was one of my, there was actually a whole I always mention this podcast, Hit Parade, with Chris Malamphy on the Slate Network, and he did a whole episode just on Jim Steinman, like an hour and a half episode on him. So super interesting guy, and now he's gone.
Up to him, and sorry he edged you out, Walter Mondale. Another indignity to the Carter administration.
He lost again. He couldn't win. Okay, that's the end of our podcast. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, subscribe. Tell a friend in real life, right, Rachel? Like, we need to.
All your friends, tell them you must listen.
Everyone who listens to this loves it, and then everyone's like, "Do you know any good podcasts I should try?" Yes, try Nope.
Try this. You could do other things while you're listening to it. You could be Swiffering or vacuuming.
That's just an ad for podcasts as a concept. Like, just listen to our podcast.
Multitask. Okay.
Absolutely. And also, we're going to start mentioning our Twitter handles. It's at Brian Hecht, at Rachel D. Please tweet us your story ideas, feedback, etc. Hopefully,
all feedback. Nice. Yeah, hopefully it's nice.
Yeah, hopefully it's nice. 5-star reviews. Okay, thanks for listening. This has been a terrible, terrible week, but a lot of fun to record this podcast. This has been Nope,
the podcast where we shut it down.